In our pursuit of setting our hand tools up to take super thin shavings with our tools, we often concentrate a lot on blade sharpness. That's one aspect of what it takes to be able to do this, and a lot of times flatness is casually mentioned in the process of sharpening. What I'd like to do in this video is discuss a little bit more in depth about flatness and how it affects a lot more aspects of woodworking and some process. So for a long time, when I was flattening the bottom soles of my planes and stuff like that, I was using sandpaper on a piece of silestone, which is a man-made granite countertop product. I thought it was flat enough to go ahead and serve this purpose, which did work fine for a while, but deep diving into some things, I decided to check what this was like, and this is a 0.0015 15/10,000ths of an inch feeler, and you can see about in the middle, I can slip that under here pretty easy. That 15/10,000ths makes a big difference if you're shooting to make shavings half that thickness, you know, anything under 1,000th. As you can tell right here, if I put a piece of sandpaper on this and I'm sanding the sole of a plane, I probably end up with a little bit of a bow in the bottom. It might not be noticeable for the most part, but remember, you're shooting to make a shaving half the thickness of this 15/10,000ths. Combine that with if your blade is not flat and other aspects, that could be problematic and part of the reason why you're not being as successful with your hand tools as what your expectation is. Now what brought me to this was I'm working on a number 6 Stanley I found, and I was working on the bottom, and what I wanted was a longer area that I could have sandpaper on to go ahead and get that long sole flattened out. To do that, I had to come back to my workbench and work on flattening that. So I really kind of started going down the rabbit hole of flatness. Did my due diligence on my YouTube research, and the question was, how flat should a bench top be? And that answer was, depends on what you're using it for. So I use this for a lot of my better woodworking that I try to do, so flatness matters on this. I got it pretty good. I know where some of the areas are that need some work, but at this point I'm just going to take my time and work it out. So anyway, to do the long sole of a plane, I decided I was going to go ahead and use a piece of plate glass on this. And I have a piece that's almost 1/4 inch thick. It's just under, it's long enough to where I can go ahead and, you know, get a good flow going on it. And so deciding to check the flatness of this with my workbench, I come in and come across, and I'm looking pretty good all the way across this. I checked it a few ways. It may slip under somewhere, but right there it's a little touchy, but I know where my area is that's going to be flat. So on this side right here, just to show you what will happen, this section of my bench is flat. I'm going to slide it down about 5 or 6 inches, and you'll see where this feeler gauge will slip right under that end, right there. What matters about that right here in my bench is, in flatness with your bench, is that when I put a piece of wood on here to work it, if I'm chopping dovetails or mortises or something like that, and there's a little bit of a gap underneath that, or even if you're planing or scraping, that 15/10,000ths of an inch underneath that board will make a huge difference on whether your tools or you are performing the way that they should. So your material should be flat as it can be and set flat on that workbench, because that little gap will make the difference between a frustrating experience and a pleasurable experience doing your woodworking. So flatness, not only in your tools, but on your work surface and the materials you're working with, makes just as much of a difference as how sharp that blade is in the tool. And with these longer tools, it's even more important, because you've got a long distance here that you could have that thousandth of a difference. And then if you're looking this way, if there's a little bit of a bow or a dip, that's going to affect the protrusion of your blade. And if this blade isn't flat and square, then that'll just multiply the issue even further. And if this is bowed this way, as you work, you could end up rocking this on your work. So I don't think it's emphasized enough by a lot of people about flatness, and it's well worth having the equipment to test for flatness and check things and make sure that what you're working with gets as flat as you can possibly get it. This includes chisel backs, plain blade backs, anything you work with. And if you're using something like that to flatten your stones, it could affect how your stones, they could have a little bow in it either way. Like I said, I've got some trends. They're not exactly flat, but I know it, so I know how to work around it. So flatness does matter in more aspects than what you might think. So hope this was a little helpful, and hope to see you on the next video.